Good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Hemming. I'm the Member Relations and Education Manager here with Leading Age Maryland, and I am very thankful to have Lauren Mathews here with us today for our Leading Age Stand-Up. She is a broker at the DMV Insurance Agency, and for the next 15 minutes or so, she's going to be talking to us about insurance FAQs for older adults and their families as well. So, Lauren, I will hand things over to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. As was mentioned, we handle a lot of different insurance aspects, whether we're working with organizations or individuals. And one of the things that was shared with me was that a number of insurance questions come in from either families and older adults who are considering aging services or needing aging services, or residents who are moving in, and it's something that they've, just remembered or has come back to their mind that it's something they need to address. So, given that there are so many moving parts relative to planning for older adults and, different things that need to happen, one of the things that gets overlooked often is the insurances, whether it's that person's auto policy because they were driving before they were moving in and won't need their vehicle, whether it's their homeowners or renters policy. It's just often kind of out of sight, out of mind, and it gets remembered at the last minute and people aren't quite sure what they should be doing. So I'll talk a little bit about some of the top three, which will be auto, home, and I'll also leave a little bit of time to speak briefly about life insurance coverages as well. So from the car perspective, it's always, an easy situation because they're seeing the car and they'll say, oh, we have this vehicle, we plan to sell it, they're not taking it with them. What should we do? And so usually if they've transacted with a broker to get that coverage, you can just kind of direct them back to speak with their insurance broker who will be able to take over from there and handle canceling those policies. But with the invention of companies like Geico and Progressive and others where you can just, place your own auto policy without needing the help of a broker. Usually the family member or they may need to give approval to the family member, the older adult, to call on their behalf to those insurance companies that they've gotten that policy to go ahead and cancel that. Always cancel it after the vehicle is sold or has been turned over or whatever is being done with it. But one thing to point out when they're canceling these policies, depending on if they've paid for them in advance or are paying monthly, if they've paid in advance, they actually have premium that could be refunded to them. So it's always good to point that out, to keep an eye out for that if that's the case, or if they've already just been simply paying month to month, to make sure to try and cancel before they're charged again if they no longer have that vehicle. So it's really easy and straightforward. It's just depending on that family member or that older adult knowing who exactly they need to speak with, whether it's the broker or the insurance company directly. From the home and renters perspective, it's also fairly simple, but it gets a little bit complicated in that if the older adult has a mortgage on a property, a lot of times if the property is sold or is rented or anything along those lines, but oftentimes it ends up being sold, people often think that once it's sold, that somehow the mortgage company handles that homeowner's policy cancellation, and they do not. And it could be that they may not find out for quite some time that homeowner's policy is still active. So again, always ask if they have worked with a broker for that policy and kind of direct them back in that direction if that's the case. If they say no, they didn't, or they did it themselves, it's always a good idea to have them give a call directly to their insurance company and their mortgage company, especially if they plan to sell it and it hasn't been sold yet, because they would definitely be due some return of their premium and their escrow as well, simply because insurance for home properties are paid for a year in advance. So they may end up getting a large lump sum back for those policies. Renters is very, very simple because there's no escrow involved, and there's less, other things that is tied to. So it's just a matter of calling and having either the broker or themselves cancel that. And so those are the two major things to point out. And then for life insurance, it gets a little bit more complicated because, again, there's so many different types of life insurance that someone could have. They could have a universal life or a term life policy. But I'm going to focus mostly on those who either have term or full or no insurance. I know oftentimes when people become older, if they have those fully paid for whole life policies, you can actually borrow against that. And some do to pay for their services or their residential stay. And if people have term life, they may have actually allowed that to cancel out because it's for a set period of time. And oftentimes people have it when their children are young, but no longer need it when they become older. But from the perspective of residents who are moving in or prospective residents and they don't have any insurance, no whole or term, as you get older, it becomes increasingly more expensive to actually obtain those insurances. So some it becomes cost prohibitive to go out and get those traditional policies that may have been available to them in their younger years. And so you can direct them to their insurance broker or to speak with someone who sells these policies, but they're specifically for covering your final expense. So there are options out there depending on what their financial needs are, but again, always kind of steer them in the direction of someone who is a licensed professional in that field who can give them guidance. But if they are focused on doing it themselves, just to simply, check into the marketplace and see what kind of insurance carriers are available to offer those services. From the perspective of, individuals coming in and asking these questions, I always recommend to have some kind of written FAQ document or location on your website or included in your existing FAQs to address these insurances, because it really does help, especially as I mentioned, there's so many moving parts in the process that the insurance gets forgotten. And so I think to either have a separate FAQ document or just a list of questions inside of your standard FAQs to address will really help a lot of your potential customers or current residents know where to start relative to their insurance policies. So typically I know we don't typically do questions. So again, if there's anyone who does need help, if you already work with a broker, this is something that they can help you kind of draft those insurance related FAQs. If you do not, we can certainly assist there in giving you guidance on what you can include and vetting whether or not certain documents or certain statements can be included in your FAQ related to insurance. But again, with all of the things that you're responsible for handling, the one thing, you don't want to have to be worried about the insurance coverages. So definitely direct to an FAQ or kind of direct your potential residents and older adults to speak directly with any brokers that they already are working with to help them manage and plan for that.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Does anyone on the line today have any questions? I don't see any questions on the chat, but feel free to unmute if you have a question. Okay. Well, Lauren, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you coming to talk about some of these FAQs for older adults and for their families. We certainly will share this recording with those that attended and also with our members here at Leading Age Maryland, and then also contact information if they have specific questions that they can reach out to you for those.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you so much, everyone on the call.
Absolutely. I hope everybody has a great rest of the day.